Once upon a time, Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through it. A man was there named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd, he couldn't because he was short in stature. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree to see him because Jesus was going to pass that way. When Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today." So Zacchaeus hurried down and was happy to welcome Jesus. All who saw it began to grumble and said, "Jesus is gone to be the guest of one who is a sinner." Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, "Look, half my possessions, Lord, I will give to the poor, and if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will pay back 4 times as much." Then Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because he too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek out and to save the lost." That's from Luke 19. That's the story we could have some fun acting out. We would need a tree and a crowd and a Jesus. That's always tricky to cast somehow. No one ever wants to play the part of Jesus. We'd also need someone of rather short stature, maybe a child, to climb up a strategically placed ladder. That would be the starring role, for don't you know, Zacchaeus is the hero of our story. Or is he? Everyone present on that day would have answered, "Oh no, Zacchaeus, definitely villain. First of all, tax collector, no good, and a cheating tax collector." That goes without saying, they all were. And he even cheated the crowd that day, didn't he? Climbing up a tree to steal a better look at Jesus. Why should he get a better look than the rest of them, the ones who stood on solid ground and moved politely aside to give others a better view? I'm sure they did that. That Zacchaeus, that little cheat, no one you would ever look up to. Also, he was short, you couldn't. And yet someone looked up and saw him in the branches of that sycamore tree. Someone whose eyes always sought out those unseen, those overlooked. Someone whose eyes saw promise and potential even in the worst of the sinners. Someone named Jesus who said, "Hey, Zacchaeus, hurry and come down. I'm staying at your house today." In other words, come down from that tree because I am going to lift you up to a much higher place than that. I'm going to let you serve me, and you'll be forever remembered as the man chosen by Jesus for that special privilege. What? I would have been mad, wouldn't you? All of us, good people, hoping to just get an honest glance at Jesus, maybe even catch his eye as he passed, exchange a little smile. That's all we would have wanted, you and I. But to have him single out the worst of the sinners, that lowly, cheating scoundrel, and elevate him to such a status of honor? Why Zacchaeus of all people? Whatever was Jesus thinking? Couldn't he have picked someone better? Someone more worthy? Zacchaeus, what a lost cause. Why go after him when so many more obedient, deserving souls were there that day? People who would have loved to have invited Jesus to their homes. Forget about Zacchaeus. But Jesus could no more forget about Zacchaeus than that proverbial shepherd that Jesus talked about once. Remember the story? The guy who lost one sheep and couldn't forget about it? He would leave the other 99 and go looking until he found that one, and then carry it home on his shoulders, rejoicing in having found the one lost lamb. What did Jesus just say here? The Son of Man came to seek out and save the lost. That's right. He reminded Zacchaeus and anyone listening, and that is the good news, that through Christ, even the worst sinners can be transformed. That is the depth and breadth of God's grace, that even runty, mean-spirited little Zacchaeus, the guy everyone likes to hate, is precious enough for Jesus to carry, metaphorically, on his shoulders, restoring him into fellowship with God and with community. For it is through Jesus' unconditional love that Zacchaeus is motivated to change his heart and mend his ways, pledging to give half of all his possessions to the poor and repay anyone he has defrauded 4 times the amount. Zacchaeus is likely going to ruin himself financially, but what he will gain is priceless. This story, unique to Luke's gospel, happens to be Jesus' last public interaction before his final entrance into Jerusalem. And how fitting, really, for Luke to use this story to drive home the theme that has permeated his gospel from the very beginning, when Mary praised God for lifting up the lowly. Jesus' entire ministry has been about seeing people who are overlooked, bringing the outcasts into the beloved community. He has championed the blind, the poor, the sick, the widows, the unclean, and now the biggest lost cause of all, Zacchaeus, because no one is too lost to be found lovable by God. And just as that proverbial shepherd delighted in finding the one lost lamb, so Jesus delights in restoring Zacchaeus into the community of faith and fellowship, declaring, "Today salvation has come to the house, because he too is the son of Abraham." Prodigal son, more like, wasting his spiritual inheritance on his sinful, money-focused lifestyle of cheating his neighbors. But on that day, Jesus forgave him and feasted with him. Small as Zacchaeus was, unloved and unlovable, Jesus sought him and found him, and that made all the difference. Was he a saint? By no means. And yet, salvation came to his house in this life-transforming interaction with Jesus. Zacchaeus, the meanest sinner, was brought onto the path of sainthood by accepting the invitation of Jesus to come into his home and his life. When you think of the word saint, I'm guessing you probably don't think of anyone like Zacchaeus, right? You probably think of someone like Mother Teresa, maybe St. Paul or St. Francis, maybe even the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. or Gandhi, people whose lives seem to us to have been exceptionally spirit-filled. We think of saints as pure, as untouchable, and often long dead, and it's easy to think of any of those people as saintly, not only because they did amazing things, but also because we did not know them. All we know is what is recorded of their noble lives and incredible legacies. But we don't always get to hear about the bad days, the times that the saints lost their patience, or the unkind thoughts they might have occasionally harbored toward their neighbors who played the music too loud and too late, or the times they forgot to call their mama on her birthday. Because being a saint does not mean being perfect. Sainthood, as much as we have mystified the word, is really about the process that John Wesley, whose ideas began this movement called Methodism, he called it sanctification, which is actually the third step in a three-part series called Grace. Quick summary. Step one is prevenient grace, meaning God is always there waiting for you. That's what Jesus offered to Zacchaeus, an unconditional loving invitation. Step two, we call justifying grace. That's when we reach out and accept the invitation, that life-changing, heartwarming decision to follow Jesus best we can and live the life that God dreams for us. Zacchaeus experienced justifying grace when he promised Jesus publicly to right the wrongs of his life and become a new person. Which brings us to step three, sanctifying grace, which is not just a moment, but our entire lives lived in loving service to God and neighbor. It's a process, a commitment, a lifestyle, a goal which we might never fully reach in our lifetimes, but with God's grace, we'll die trying. I've given quite a few eulogies over the past decade or so, and I have learned people are as multifaceted as the diamonds that a rich man like Zacchaeus may have worn. To give a proper eulogy, you either have to ignore the less sparkling truths of a person's life, or you have to be able to tell about them with grace and humor. The hardest eulogy I ever gave was for my dad, partly because I was a grieving daughter, but also because I knew him so well. How could I tell the story of Saint Peter Mackey without remembering the faults that I, his daughter, also knew him to have? And maybe that's why sainthood seems so unattainable for us. The better we know someone, the more keenly aware we are of their faults, and therefore we're also our own harshest critics, completely aware of the many ways when we have failed. Yet this Zacchaeus story brings us the wonderful news. Jesus still finds us worthy and willingly takes our hand, lifting us up on our journey towards sanctification. This All Saints Sunday, we lift up the names of our own beloved saints, the ones who have gone on to glory ahead of us, and we remember them for what they were and for what they aspired to be, even if they didn't hit the target every single time. We honor them in their memories, the lessons they taught us, the examples they provided, good and bad, and most importantly, we recognize that they were people like us, living each day toward a life of sanctification, a sainthood attainable only through God's grace. We, the keepers of their life stories, do no one a favor by glossing over the imperfections of someone's earthly life. We honor them best when we remember that, like us, they had their struggles and maybe even felt lost at times. But I am convinced through the words and deeds of Jesus Christ that God embraced every one of them, finding them worthy. I mean, if it could happen to Zacchaeus. Today we remember the lives and deaths of our beloved saints. But let us also recognize the saints among us still today, including ourselves. What, me a saint? I know, right? Yeah, each of us, all of us. Let us not sell ourselves short. Our final eulogies have not yet been written unless you are really a planner, but they are works in progress, day by day, written by the way we live our lives. So may our lives every day be lived with the goal of sanctification, knowing that in our living and in our dying, we belong to God, who lifts up the lowly, even Zacchaeus, even us, finding us all worthy to claim the title of saint.